I remember growing up in this neighborhood, and I remember this neighborhood as Little Jerusalem. And this part of Dublin, the Portobello area, was once upon a time densely populated with Jewish people. In all the small streets surrounding the Irish Jewish Museum, which was formerly a synagogue, there were Jewish families, sometimes as many as 2 or 3 families to a house. And these were the people who had the heavy clothes. And I remember during certainly as a young child, one thing that has left an impression on me. The big boots that they wore, the big black boots right up to almost to their knees. I remember old people with these big boots coming around. And I would assume that this was both in winter and summer. I remember walking many a time up to the top of Clanbrassil Street, just before it meets Upper Clanbrassil Street. And there was a newspaper vendor. And as soon as Friday comes, you'd hear him, a non-Jewish man, shouting, "Good Shabbos." He knew half a dozen other Yiddish words, and says, "Was macht man?" and "How are you?" and "Sei gesund." It's kalt, it's cold. He knew about half a dozen phrases, and he was selling newspapers. Of course, Jewish people used to buy the newspapers. He was an old man standing there for many, many years, I suppose. I saw that he was an old man, but he had about a dozen Yiddish phrases, and he used them as appropriate. But he would call out to people as they passed by, Jewish people as they passed by. In Clanbrassil Street, which at that time was the sole center of Jewish shopping, and Clanbrassil Street, Lower Clanbrassil Street, one section of it had practically every shop was a Jewish shop. And so you had in that area shops that sold grocery goods, haberdashery items, clothing. There was a Jewish restaurant. I do remember the chickens arriving in with a horse-drawn cart or wagon being drawn, and the boxes of chickens being piled, the containers, small containers, and each one had a chicken, and the Jewish women would be standing around the horse and cart with these containers containing the live chickens and selecting which ones they felt. And the area was rather unique in that the Jewish community of Dublin up to the 1880s had always been on the north side of the city of Dublin. Capel Street area, Parnell Square, and the synagogue was off Capel Street, off Abbey Street. It was in Mary's Abbey. And the Jewish people lived in the north side of the city. So the Jews that came in the 1880s, 1890s were breaking new ground in that they were coming to an area of the city where there were no Jewish settlement at that time. I remember when Lord Jakubowicz, Chief Rabbi Lord Jakubowicz, came to Dublin as the Chief Rabbi. He was newly married at that stage to Miss Amelie Monk, the daughter of the Chief Rabbi of Paris, and their family grew up in Bloomfield Avenue, and they actually lived in the same house as was used by Chief Rabbi Isaac Halevi Herzog. And Chief Rabbi Halevi Herzog, of course, before he became Chief Rabbi, was a rabbi in Belfast in the 1916 to about 19 19. And then he came with his family to Dublin and lived there. And in actual fact, he had two firsts. The first which he had was that in 1922, the Irish Free State was formed. And on the formation of the Irish Free State, Rabbi Herzog was appointed the first chief rabbi of the Irish Free State. So that's the first time chief rabbi. He continued in Dublin as chief rabbi until 1937, and then left for the Holy Land and became the chief rabbi of the Holy Land. However, in 1948, the State of Israel was established, and he became the first chief rabbi of the State of Israel. In June 1985, the son of Chief Rabbi Isaac Herzog, Dr. Chaim Herzog, was then president of Israel. And it was decided in 1984 that he would come to Ireland on a state visit. And also in 1984, we started work to develop the Irish Jewish Museum. So during the winter of 1984 to 1985, we worked and refurbished this building and created the museum. And in early 1985, it became known that the President of Israel, Dr. Chaim Herzog, would be coming to Dublin to open on a state visit. So during his state visit to Ireland, he actually came back to this building, opened the Jewish Museum, and while here stated that as a young man, his late brother at that time, and his father and family attended services in this congregation, because in actual fact, Walworth Road is only 5 minutes away from Bloomfield Avenue. James Joyce in Ulysses refers to St. Kevin's Parade and the synagogue and the Jews of that area, also in the area of Lombard Street West. Joyce does something very unique in that he places the birthplace of Bloom in Upper Clanbrassil Street. And of course, there was a borderline. The Jews didn't cross into Upper Clanbrassil Street. They were not ever in Upper Clanbrassil Street, as far as I'm aware. So his location of the birthplace, while it's only 3 minutes walk from the corner between Lower Clanbrassil Street and Upper Clanbrassil Street, nevertheless, it's unique to see that he places the birthplace for Leopold Bloom, a Jewish family, as living in Upper Clanbrassil Street. Maybe because Bloom was half Jewish, he moved them out of the location of the center. So from 470 Jewish people in Ireland, in the whole of Ireland, 471 Jewish people in the whole of Ireland in 1881. The numbers went up to a grand total in 1951 to 5,557 or something like that. And that was the maximum number of Jewish people in the whole island of Ireland. And since then, it's gone down by about approximately 1,000 persons every 10 years. So I would say there's well less than 2,000 Jewish persons in the whole island of Ireland at the present time in 1999.
I would